On a quiet morning in late fall, Edgar Whitmore sat by the second-floor window of his estate. From his wheelchair, he noticed a small figure standing at the iron gate. It was a little black girl, maybe 6 years old, bundled in a coat that didn't fit and clutching a brown paper bag. She didn't knock or call out. She didn't say a word. Instead, she pulled out half of a broken cookie and raised it toward the house, as if she were offering it to someone inside. The driver at the front looked annoyed. Mrs. Donnelly, the housekeeper, glanced out the window and muttered, "Another stray. I'll send her away." But Edgar raised his hand. "Wait," he said, eyes fixed on the child. He wasn't moved by pity. He wasn't feeling generous. He simply couldn't look away. The girl had done something no one else had in his 73 years. She had offered him something without expecting anything in return. She had invited him to share. They watched the girl for several minutes. She didn't move. She just stood there quietly, her arm extended, holding that broken cookie like it meant something. "Do you want me to call someone?" Mrs. Donnelly asked. "No. Let her stay. She's just standing there." "I know," Edgar said. Eventually he spoke again. "Bring her in." Mrs. Donnelly turned to him. "You want her inside the house?" "Yes." "Let her in. Through the front door. She might not be safe. You don't know where she came from. She hasn't asked for anything. She gave something. That's more than I can say for most people who come to this gate." Reluctantly, Mrs. Donnelly walked downstairs and opened the main door. The girl stepped through slowly. Her shoes squeaked faintly on the marble floor. She looked around but didn't speak. Her eyes moved from the chandelier above to the grand staircase, to the tall wooden doors. Then she was led to the sitting room, where Edgar waited. She approached him cautiously, then held out the brown bag. "It's broken," she said, "but it still tastes good." Edgar looked at her, then at the bag. He took it gently. "Thank you," he said. "You looked like you needed it," the girl replied. She then sat on the rug in front of him, took off her shoes, and placed them neatly beside her. She didn't seem nervous or shy. She just looked around the room like she belonged there. Mrs. Donnelly stood at a distance, arms folded. "Should I call the police now?" she asked quietly. "No," Edgar said. "But sir." She didn't take anything. She brought something. The girl looked up at him. "Do you live here all alone?" "Yes." "Why?" "I suppose I forgot how not to." She nodded slightly, as if that made sense. "What's your name?" Edgar asked. "Tammy. Tamika when I'm in trouble." "I'll stick with Tammy." "What's your name?" "Edgar Whitmore." "That sounds like a rich name." He let out a faint smile. "It is." "Are you rich?" "Yes." "Then why are you sad?" He didn't answer. She didn't push him to. Mrs. Donnelly came back with a blanket and draped it over the girl's shoulders. She didn't look pleased but said nothing. Tammy pointed toward one of the paintings on the wall. "That one's crooked." Edgar glanced at it. "You're right. I see things," she said. "People don't always notice stuff, but I do." Edgar studied her for a moment. She was small, quiet, and sharp. There was something different about her. She wasn't frightened, just observant. She looked around the room with calm eyes, like someone used to figuring things out on her own. "You have parents?" Edgar asked gently. She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "Sometimes." He didn't push further. She lay down on the rug and stared up at the ceiling. "Your house is really quiet," she said. "Yes. Too quiet." He didn't disagree. Outside, the wind stirred the trees, but inside, the house had not felt this alive in years. Edgar glanced down at the cookie bag in his hand. It was a simple gesture, but it meant more than anything anyone had brought him in a long time. She didn't ask to come in. She didn't demand to be fed. She didn't cry or beg or talk too much. She simply showed up, handed him something small, and sat down like she belonged. And somehow she did. Tammy was still lying on the rug when Mrs. Donnelly brought her a small plate with a grilled cheese sandwich and a cup of warm milk. She didn't say thank you, but she took it with both hands and sat up cross-legged. She ate quietly, tearing the sandwich into neat halves before chewing. Edgar watched her from his chair. "You're very organized," he commented. My teacher says I eat like a robot, she said between bites. And what do you say? I say robots don't get crumbs in their shoes. Edgar smiled. It was small but real. Tammy didn't notice. Mrs. Donnelly stood nearby, arms crossed again. We should call someone. A shelter or maybe child services. She can't just stay here. Tammy didn't react to the comment. She finished her sandwich, wiped her hands on her coat, and looked at Edgar. Do you like books? Yes. Then you should have more in here. It's all paintings and statues. Books feel warmer. Edgar considered that. There's a library down the hall. Then why aren't you in there? I like the light in this room. Tammy got up, walked over to the window and looked outside. This is the biggest yard I've ever seen. Bigger than my whole street. Where do you live? I don't know right now. Mrs. Donnelly spoke up. What do you mean you don't know? Tammy shrugged. Sometimes I'm with Miss Ray at the shelter. Sometimes I'm not. Where were you last night? Under the bridge near the red trucks. Edgar looked at Mrs. Donnelly. She looked back at him, her expression hard to read. The girl turned to him again. Can I see the library? He nodded. I'll take her, Mrs. Donnelly said quickly. No, Edgar replied. She asked me. You haven't been in that room in years. I'll manage. Tammy reached for the wheels on his chair. Can I help? Edgar hesitated, then nodded. Just guide me. Slowly. She moved beside him and walked at his pace as he turned the chair toward the hallway. Mrs. Donnelly stayed behind, watching them disappear down the corridor. The hallway was lined with portraits of Edgar's family, people long gone. Tammy pointed to a woman with sharp eyes and a tight bun. She looks mean. That was my grandmother. Oh. She kept walking. The library was large and full of dust. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, revealing rows of untouched books. Edgar hadn't set foot in there in years. Tammy walked along the shelves, running her finger across the spines. You really like old stuff, she said. I used to. Do you read them? Not anymore. Why not? Edgar looked around the room. Because I stopped wanting to. Tammy pulled a book off the shelf and held it up. This one smells like the past. He chuckled. They all do. She sat on the floor and opened it. I can read a little. Want to hear? Yes. She cleared her throat and started sounding out the words. Her voice was steady, though she paused often. Edgar didn't correct her. He just listened. When she finished the page, she looked up. You didn't fall asleep. Most people do. I was listening. She smiled for the first time. You're not like other grown-ups. And you're not like other kids. They sat in silence for a while. Do you miss someone? She asked suddenly. Edgar didn't answer right away. Then he said, Many people. Me too. Your parents. Sort of. Mostly my brother. What happened to him? She looked down. He was little. Like me. He didn't make it through the winter. Edgar felt something tighten in his chest. But I made it, she added. And now I'm here. Yes, he said quietly. Now you're here. Mrs. Donnelly appeared at the doorway. There's a woman from the shelter on the phone. Says a girl named Tammy went missing last night. Tammy stood up. That's Miss Ray. Should I tell her you're here? Tammy looked at Edgar. Do I have to go back today? Edgar looked at Mrs. Donnelly. Ask Miss Ray if she'll let Tammy stay the night. Just one night. Mrs. Donnelly nodded and left. Tammy returned the book to the shelf. It's okay if I do go. I just wanted to know what a house like this felt like. What does it feel like? Edgar asked. She thought for a moment. It feels big and quiet, but less lonely than I thought. He nodded. Outside, the sky was turning orange with the first signs of sunset. The library, dusty and forgotten, now held two people who weren't used to being seen. One in a chair. One on her feet. Neither asking for anything. After dinner, Mrs. Donnelly laid out a thin mattress in the guest room upstairs, but Tammy didn't go to sleep. She wandered through the quiet house, barefoot, her small feet making soft taps on the hardwood floors. Edgar had returned to the sitting room, staring out the window again. He didn't expect her to come back. But she did. She entered the room without knocking and stood in the doorway. "This house has too many rooms," she said. "It does," Edgar replied. "And most of them are empty." She looked around, then walked in. "Is it okay if I sit here again?" He nodded. Tammy settled into the same spot on the rug, pulling her knees to her chest. "I can't sleep in other people's beds," she said. "They feel too soft." Edgar turned his chair slightly toward her. "You sleep on the floor often?" "Floors don't lie. You know what you're getting." He didn't argue. After a pause, she asked, "What's behind that door?" "That's the music room." "You play?" "Used to." She got up and walked toward it. "Can I see?" He hesitated, then wheeled behind her as she slowly pushed open the tall double doors. The room was dark at first, but moonlight filtered through the high arched windows, casting pale streaks across the floor. A grand piano sat near the center, covered with a thin sheet. A cello rested upright in the corner. Dust floated in the air. Tammy stepped inside and walked toward the piano. "Is it real?" "It is." "Can I touch it?" "Yes." "Just gently." She ran her fingers across the keys, pressing one softly. The note rang out, sharp and lonely. "It sounds sad," she said. "Maybe it remembers too much." She sat down on the bench. "Did you play this?" "I did. A long time ago." "Can you still?" Edgar rolled closer but didn't answer. His hands rested on his lap, unmoving. "I had a music teacher once," Tammy said. "At the shelter. He taught me how to hum scales." She began to hum, softly at first, then louder as the sound filled the room. Her voice wasn't perfect, but it had something else, something steady and unafraid. Edgar listened, his eyes fixed on the piano, the keys she wasn't touching now. He remembered the weight of them under his fingers, the hours he used to spend alone here, playing for no one. Tammy finished humming and looked over her shoulder. "Do you want me to stop?" "No. It was nice." She smiled. "You want to hear something weird?" "Always. I dreamt of this house before I came here. Not the whole thing but the sound. That lonely note. I think it was waiting for someone to press it again." Edgar raised an eyebrow. "You believe in that kind of thing?" "I believe in strange things. Don't you?" He didn't answer. Tammy stood and walked to the cello. "This one's too big for me." "It belonged to my daughter," Edgar said quietly. Tammy froze. "You had a daughter?" "Yes." "Where is she?" He looked away. "She's not here anymore." Tammy didn't ask more. She just nodded and looked around the room. Then she noticed a folded blanket draped over a nearby armchair. It was old but clean, hand-stitched with faded colors. "Can I borrow this?" "For what?" "I'll sleep here tonight. The sound feels safer." Edgar thought for a moment. "All right." Tammy took the blanket and returned to the piano bench. She curled up on it, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. "This room doesn't lie either," she said softly. "I like that." Edgar stayed a while longer, watching her eyes grow heavy. She didn't ask for a bedtime story or a light left on. She didn't ask anything at all. Mrs. Donnelly peeked in an hour later and frowned. "She's sleeping in the music room?" "She chose it," Edgar said. "She'll catch a cold in there." "She has a blanket." Mrs. Donnelly sighed. "I'll bring her a pillow." She returned minutes later with one and gently placed it under the girl's head. Then she whispered, "This is not a good idea, sir." Edgar didn't respond. He rolled his chair closer to the piano and sat in the dark beside her, not moving, not speaking. The air was thick with dust and silence, but something had changed. The house no longer felt quite so hollow. And the piano had been touched again. The next morning, Tammy was still asleep on the piano bench, curled beneath the old quilt, one hand resting on a piano key. Edgar watched her from the doorway. He hadn't slept much, but he didn't mind. The quiet didn't feel as heavy. At 8 a.m., the front gate buzzer rang. Mrs. Donnelly answered and returned moments later. "There's a woman from the shelter outside. Miss Ritt. She's here to pick up the girl." Edgar didn't move. "Bring her in." "She's waiting at the gate." "Invite her in." "Through the front door." Mrs. Donnelly hesitated. "Are you sure?" "I am." 5 minutes later, Miss Ray stepped into the entryway. She was in her 40s, hair pulled into a tight bun, glasses perched low on her nose. Her coat was damp with the morning mist, and she carried a leather satchel with paperwork. "Good morning, Mr. Whitmore," she said politely. "Thank you for contacting us." "She found her way here," he replied. "I only let her in. She's been missing for 2 days. We've been looking everywhere. She never said she was lost." Miss Ray offered a tired smile. "She never does." Edgar gestured down the hallway. "She's in the music room." Miss Ray followed him through the corridor. She glanced at the portraits on the walls, then at the ornate door that stood ajar. Tammy was just waking up, blinking at the sunlight pouring through the windows. Miss Ray walked in. "Tammy." The girl sat up slowly. "Hi, Miss Ray. You scared us." "I'm okay." Miss Ray knelt beside her. "You can't just disappear like that." "I didn't disappear. I was here. You need to tell someone where you go." Tammy looked at Edgar. "I told someone." Miss Ray turned to Edgar. "She's been through a lot. She doesn't always trust adults." "She didn't ask for anything," he said. "She never does." Tammy stood up, holding the blanket. "Can I keep this?" "It's not mine to give," Miss Ray said. Edgar nodded. "She can keep it." Tammy folded it carefully and held it close. Miss Ray looked around the music room. "This place is beautiful." "It's quieter than it looks," Edgar said. She studied him for a second. "She found you for a reason." "I don't think she found me. I think I was standing still." Miss Ray stood. "We'll get going now." Tammy turned to Edgar. "Can I come back? Do you want to?" "I do." Miss Ray raised an eyebrow. "That's the first time I've heard her say that." Edgar looked at her. "Would it be allowed?" "It depends. If you're interested in something formal." "I'm not sure what this is yet." "Well," Miss Ray said, "if you'd like to visit the shelter, we could discuss options. Even short-term mentoring." "I don't mentor," Edgar replied. "You might be surprised." Tammy took Edgar's hand for a second, then let go. "Bye, Mr. Edgar." He didn't correct her. She walked out the door with Miss Ray, still clutching the blanket. Mrs. Donnelly stood in the hallway. "You're not seriously considering more visits, are you?" "I haven't decided." "She doesn't belong in this house." Edgar looked at her. "Neither do most people." Mrs. Donnelly folded her arms. "You're letting your emotions lead you, sir. That's not like you." "No," he said. "It's not." She sighed. "I'll go tidy the music room." Edgar wheeled himself into the empty space once more. The piano bench was bare, but the outline from the quilt still marked the cushion. On the floor sat a small paper scrap, a torn corner from a library checkout slip. He picked it up. Scrawled in pencil were the words, "Page 12 has my favorite part." He turned toward the shelves, wondering what book she'd taken it from. Later that afternoon, Edgar made a phone call to the shelter. "Miss Ray speaking. This is Edgar Whitmore. I'd like to schedule a visit." She sounded surprised but pleased. "Of course. Tomorrow afternoon." "Yes." He paused, then added, "And if I bring books, do the children read?" "Some do. Tammy definitely does." "I'll bring a few." "That would be lovely." He hung up. That evening, Mrs. Donnelly noticed a small stack of books near the door. "Going somewhere?" "I am." "For how long?" "Just a few hours." She said nothing, only dusted the table beside him in silence. As night fell, Edgar returned to the music room. The piano was quiet again. The bench was empty. But for the first time in years, he ran a hand over the keys. Then, without a word, he pressed one. It was the same note Tammy had touched. The next afternoon, Edgar arrived at the shelter in a black town car. He insisted on driving himself, or at least sitting up front, though his driver still handled the wheel. The building was plain, tucked between a shuttered bookstore and a laundromat. A small metal sign read Brookside Youth Center. Miss Ray met him at the entrance. "Mr. Whitmore, thank you for coming." He nodded. "Is Tammy here?" "She is. She's in the reading room. I brought some books." She smiled. "Come in." Inside, The building smelled faintly of cleaning supplies and old carpet. Children's voices echoed from a back hallway. A teen swept past them carrying a basket of laundry. Someone was crying softly in a nearby room, but no one commented. Miss Ray led Edgar to a small room with mismatched beanbags and shelves of donated paperbacks. Tammy was sitting cross-legged on the floor, flipping through a picture book with a torn cover. When she saw Edgar, she stood quickly. "You came. I said I would." She looked at the bag in his lap. "Did you bring something?" "I did." He handed her the first book. "This one's about a horse that refuses to run in circles." She giggled. "Sounds like me." He handed her another. "This one has no pictures. But it has a map inside." Her eyes lit up. "I like maps." "I figured." Miss Ray left them alone. Tammy settled back into the beanbag. "Is it quiet at your house again?" "Very. I missed it." "You can't miss a place you only stayed one night." "I can." He didn't argue. A boy walked by the door, peeked in, and stared at Edgar's wheelchair. Tammy called out, "It's rude to stare, Marcus." The boy muttered something and disappeared. Edgar raised an eyebrow. "You run this place?" She shrugged. "Some of them listen." They sat in silence for a moment. Tammy finally asked, "Why did you let me stay that night?" "You needed a place." "Most people wouldn't." "I'm not most people." "Neither am I." He handed her another book. "This one's about a girl who lives in a tree." Tammy opened it and began to read aloud. Her voice was soft but clear. After a few minutes, she looked up. "Why are you really here?" "You asked if you could come back." "I didn't think you'd say yes." "I'm not very predictable these days." She smiled. "That's a good thing." Miss Ray returned with 2 cups of juice. "Tammy, you have chores in 10 minutes." "I know." Miss Ray turned to Edgar. "You're welcome to stay for the afternoon. We have an open play session in the rec room at 4. "I'd like to observe." Tammy tugged his sleeve. "Do you want to see where we eat?" He followed her to the cafeteria. The room was loud and chaotic, with chipped trays and dented metal tables. Still it had warmth. A girl offered Tammy a half-finished sandwich. A volunteer gave Edgar a polite nod. Tammy pointed at the corner. "That's where I sit when I don't want to talk." He nodded. "Good spot." "Do you have a spot like that?" "Yes." "It's a music room." She grinned. "I like that room." He wheeled forward. "Maybe one day it'll be yours." She looked surprised. "Really?" I said maybe. Maybe is better than no. Later, in the rec room, Edgar watched as Tammy played a clapping game with 2 younger girls. She laughed freely, without caution. Occasionally, she looked over to see if he was still watching. He always was. A boy approached him. "You her uncle?" "No." "Foster dad?" "No." "Then why are you here?" "Because she asked me to be." The boy stared, then wandered off. When the session ended, Tammy walked back over. "You didn't leave." "I said I wouldn't." She stood in front of him, quiet for a moment. "Do you want to come next week?" "Yes." "You'll come?" "I don't say things I don't mean." She nodded slowly. "Me neither." Miss Ray came to collect her. "Time to wash up, Tammy." The girl turned to go, then paused. "Can I read one of the books tonight?" "Take whichever one you want." She chose the one with the map. As she left, Edgar remained seated, watching the children scatter into their routines. Noisy, messy, unpredictable, and alive. Miss Ray returned. "She's changed since meeting you." "I haven't done anything." "You showed up. That's more than most." "I'll be back next week." Miss Ray nodded. "I'll put you on the list." As he was helped into the car outside, Edgar looked once more at the shelter's front steps. He had walked away from many things in life. But this, he thought, was something he would walk toward, even if he had to roll to get there. The following Thursday, rain fell hard against the roof of the Whitmore mansion. The sky was a dull gray, and water slid in sheets across the tall windows of the study. Edgar sat in his wheelchair near the fireplace, a book open on his lap but unread. Mrs. Donnelly entered with a phone in hand. "There's a girl at the gate." He looked up. "From the shelter?" She didn't say. She just stood there in a raincoat, dripping. When the guard asked who she was, she said, "He'll want to see me." Did she give a name? Tammy. Edgar didn't hesitate. Let her in. Minutes later, the front door opened, and Tammy stepped inside. Her raincoat was several sizes too big, and her sneakers squished with every step. Her hair was soaked through, sticking to her forehead. "I didn't know where else to go," she said. "You're always welcome here." Mrs. Donnelly frowned. "She came alone. We should call the shelter." Edgar nodded. "In a moment." He turned to Tammy. "Is everything all right?" She shrugged. They were arguing again. Miss Ray and the director. "Some people want to send me to another center. Far away." "Did you run away?" "No. I just walked out." He looked at Mrs. Donnelly. "Get her a towel. And tea." With a sigh, she left the room. Edgar gestured to the couch. "Sit." Tammy peeled off her wet coat and settled in. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." "You didn't." "I remembered the piano. I wanted to hear it again." "You still haven't played it." "I know." Mrs. Donnelly returned with a towel and a cup of tea. She placed them both on the side table and stood watching. "We'll call the shelter," Edgar said again firmly. Tammy sipped the tea carefully. "Can I stay for a little while?" "Yes. But they need to know you're safe." She nodded. Edgar dialed the shelter's number. Miss Ray answered on the third ring. "She's here," he said simply. There was a pause. "Is she all right?" "Wet but fine." "Thank God." The director was about to call the police. "She doesn't want to be transferred." "I know. I'm fighting it." "Can she stay the night?" There was hesitation. "It's against policy." "She'll be supervised. In a secure home. Warm, fed, dry." Another pause. "I'll take responsibility. One night." "Thank you." He hung up and turned to Tammy. "You're staying." She smiled into her teacup. Later, she followed him into the music room again. The storm made the windows rattle, but inside, it was warm. "Can I try now?" she asked, standing by the piano. He nodded. She sat on the bench and lifted the lid. Her fingers hovered for a moment, then slowly pressed a single key. Then another. Then a third. The notes were uneven but clear. She played what sounded like the beginning of a lullaby, hesitant, halting, but real. He watched in silence. When she stopped, she turned to him. "I used to play before. In foster homes. When they had a keyboard or something." "You remembered it." "I didn't think I did. But it came back." "You were good." "No, I wasn't. But thank you." A flash of lightning lit the room. Tammy looked toward the window. "Scared?" he asked. "No. Just thinking." "About what?" "If I had a house like this, I'd never leave." "It's just a house." "No. It's safe." He nodded slowly. "I forget that sometimes." Tammy stood and moved to the shelves. "Do you have any puzzles?" "Bottom cabinet. Third drawer." She opened it and pulled one out. "This one's missing 3 pieces. I've been meaning to throw it out." She shrugged. "We can still build most of it." They sat together on the floor. Him in his chair, her cross-legged with the pieces spread between them. For 20 minutes, neither spoke. The wind howled outside. After they were done, she pointed at the empty spots in the corner. "We can imagine those. Sometimes imagination works better than the real thing." She yawned. "Bedtime," he said. "I don't want to sleep alone." "You won't. The guest room's next to mine. I'll have Mrs. Donnelly set it up." "She doesn't like me." "She tolerates what I tell her to tolerate." "That's something, I guess." Mrs. Donnelly helped Tammy settle into the guest room while Edgar returned to his study. He looked out at the storm, thinking how strange it was that a child had walked through thunder and lightning just to hear silence again, and that he had let her in without hesitation. The next morning, Edgar called the shelter. Miss Ray's voice sounded tense. "They're not happy," she said. "The director wants to file a report." "She gave permission." "She did. But now she's pretending she didn't. They're saying you manipulated us. That you're trying to take the girl." Edgar's tone sharpened. "Take her? She came to me in the middle of a storm." "I believe you." But the board doesn't care about what makes sense. They care about liability. I want to help her. I know. But if you keep getting involved like this, they'll move her. Out of spite. Out of fear. They think you're trying to adopt her. Edgar was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "And what if I am?" Miss Ray didn't respond at first. "Then they'll fight you. Hard." Edgar hung up. He looked over at the hallway where Tammy's door was still closed. Mrs. Donnelly passed by with a tray of breakfast and paused when she saw his expression. "Something wrong?" "Yes. You're going to get yourself into a mess, you know." "Too late for that." Tammy emerged from the room a few minutes later, her hair still messy from sleep, carrying the puzzle box. "Can we finish it today?" "We already did." She pointed at the 3 missing pieces. "No, we didn't." Edgar gestured toward the dining room. "Eat first. Then we talk." Over eggs and toast, he explained the situation as simply as he could. "The shelter might move you," he said. Tammy's face went blank. "Because I came here? Because people are afraid of what they don't understand. Can't you tell them not to? I don't have that kind of power." She poked at her toast. "Then I'll run away again." "You can't." "Why not?" "Because next time, someone might not open the door." She looked down at her plate, silent. He reached across the table. "If you stay calm, I'll find a way to help. But we have to do it the right way." She didn't answer. By mid-morning, Miss Ray arrived at the mansion. She stepped out of a rideshare with an umbrella and a thick folder under her arm. Edgar met her in the front hall. "She knows?" Miss Ray asked. "She does." They sat in the study while Tammy waited in the music room. "The board wants her transferred by Monday," Miss Ray said. "A group home in Fairview. That's hours away." "I know. She'll disappear in a place like that." "I know that too." Edgar leaned forward. "I'm willing to take her in. Officially." Miss Ray inhaled sharply. "That's a long process. I have lawyers. They'll say you're too old, that you live alone, that you're only doing this out of guilt or impulse." "Let them." She looked at him for a long moment. "Why her?" He didn't have an easy answer. "Because she's not afraid of me. Because she sat in my music room like she belonged there. Because she remembers how to play." Miss Ray opened the folder. "I brought the paperwork. I'm not promising anything. But if you want to try, this is where it starts." Edgar took the folder and glanced through the first few pages. Tammy stepped into the room quietly. "What are you doing?" "Starting something," he said. Miss Ray smiled gently. "We're filling out some forms. To see if maybe Mr. Whitmore can be your guardian." Tammy blinked. "Like, forever?" "No promises," Edgar said. She looked from him to Miss Ray, then back again. "Do I get to say anything?" "Of course," Miss Ray said. "I want to stay." "That helps," Edgar said. They spent the next 2 hours filling out forms, making calls, scanning documents. Mrs. Donnelly brought in sandwiches but didn't ask questions. When it was done, Miss Ray stood. "This buys us a little time. Nothing's guaranteed." "I understand." She turned to Tammy. "You'll come back with me today." Tammy's face fell. "I can't stay." "Not yet." Edgar nodded. "But you'll come back." Tammy stared at him. "Will you still be here?" "Every time you come through that door." She looked at the puzzle on the table. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out 3 small cardboard shapes. "Where did you get those?" he asked. "I found them under the couch." She walked to the puzzle and placed each piece in its spot. The picture was complete. "There," she said. "Now we finished it." She followed Miss Ray out to the car. At the door, she turned back. "Don't lose the puzzle." "I won't." The car pulled away, and Edgar stood in the doorway long after the rain had stopped. 3 days later, Edgar found himself inside a social services office for the first time in decades. The walls were painted in a bland shade of yellow, the chairs were plastic, and the smell of stale coffee clung to everything. His lawyer, Vanessa Price, sat beside him flipping through a folder. Across the desk sat a woman named Teresa Bloom, child welfare liaison, clipboard in hand, glasses low on her nose. "So, Mr. Whitmore," she said without looking up, "you're interested in becoming a guardian to Tammy Reed?" Yes. You're aware of her background? I've read the file. She's been in and out of multiple placements. Foster homes. Shelters. Behavior flags. Minor incidents. She's not a danger to anyone. She doesn't trust anyone. That's what makes her difficult. She trusted me. Ms. Bloom glanced up, unimpressed. Children often bond quickly with people who show them attention. That doesn't make it stable. Edgar didn't blink. Neither does bouncing them from one institution to another. Vanessa gave a subtle nod beside him. Ms. Bloom flipped a page. You're 71. Unmarried. No previous history of child-rearing. You use a wheelchair. None of those are disqualifiers. No. But they raise questions. Then ask. Ms. Bloom leaned back. Why now? Why this girl? Because I didn't know her before. And now I do. That's not an answer. She came into my house, asked for milk, and stayed up reading maps. She plays music. She doesn't flinch when I speak. That's enough. Ms. Bloom made a note. And you're prepared for what this means? School enrollment. Medical records. Counseling. Day-to-day care? I have resources. Resources don't replace time. I have that too. More than I ever used before. Vanessa finally spoke. We're prepared to provide a transition plan. Tutors. Transportation. Counseling. A background check has already cleared. Ms. Bloom narrowed her eyes. Do you know the girl's favorite color? Edgar paused. I know she hides food sometimes. That she sits with her back to the wall. That she reads faster than she admits. That she stole 3 puzzle pieces and held on to them until the picture was ready. The room went quiet. I don't know her favorite color, he said, but I'd like to. Ms. Bloom tapped her pen twice, then stood. We'll conduct a home visit by Friday. If she's placed with you, it'll be under a temporary care agreement. 3 months minimum before any formal guardianship. Edgar nodded. Understood. She extended a hand. He shook it. As they exited the building, Vanessa said, that went better than expected. She doesn't like me. She doesn't have to. She just needs to believe you're serious. I am. Then you've already done the hardest part. Back at the mansion, Mrs. Donnelly was waiting in the hallway. There's someone here to see you, she said. Who? A woman from the shelter board. She didn't give a name. She's in the sitting room. Edgar rolled forward and entered the room. A sharp-looking woman in a tailored pantsuit stood with arms crossed. Early 50s. Cold eyes. Calculating smile. You're Mr. Whitmore, she said. And you are? Elaine Foster, interim chair of Brookside's Oversight Committee. Did Miss Ray send you? No. She would never ask what I came to ask. Edgar raised an eyebrow. Go on. We know you filed for temporary guardianship of Tammy Reed. Yes. We'd like you to withdraw. He blinked. Why? She's challenging. Difficult. We've tried. This situation could get messy, especially with your profile. My profile? You're a public figure. A former executive. A lawsuit waiting to happen if something goes wrong. So you want to remove the risk? We want to protect the program. She's not a risk. She's a child. Ms. Foster stepped closer. Then do what's best for her and let her go to a structured facility with staff trained for trauma. Edgar's voice was steady. You've had her for 2 years. You didn't fix anything. We provided shelter. She needs more than that. She's not your responsibility. He met her gaze. She is now. Miss Foster's smile faded. Then I hope you're ready for what comes next. She turned and left without another word. Later that evening, Edgar sat in the music room staring at the empty bench. He imagined Tammy's fingers pressing the keys again. Imperfect. Clumsy. Brave. Then he wheeled himself back to his desk, opened the guardianship packet, and began writing answers by hand. Friday came quicker than expected. At 9 a.m., a white van from Brookside Shelter pulled up in front of Edgar Whitmore's mansion. A young staff member named Elena stepped out first, followed by Tammy, her duffel bag slung over one shoulder. She wore the same scuffed sneakers and a navy hoodie pulled over her head. Edgar waited at the front door, dressed in a crisp gray sweater and slacks, his chair positioned just behind the threshold. "Morning," he said. Tammy didn't smile, but she nodded. "Hey." Elena handed over a folder. Medical forms, schedule notes, and her education file. "Miss Ray sends her best." Edgar took the folder. "Thank you. We'll give you space to settle in. I'll check back on Monday." "Appreciated." As Elena returned to the van, Tammy lingered on the steps. "Are you sure I can stay here?" she asked quietly. "I wouldn't have filled out all that paperwork if I wasn't." She looked down at her bag. "It's not heavy." "That's good. You'll be carrying it to your new room." She followed him inside. The grand foyer made her pause again. Same polished floors, same high ceiling. But this time, she didn't glance around nervously. She walked straight ahead toward the stairs. "You're upstairs now," Edgar said. "Right across from me." Mrs. Donnelly was already there, holding fresh linens. She gave Tammy a stiff nod and stepped aside. The bedroom had been redone. New sheets, a small desk, a reading lamp, even a bulletin board with pins ready for photos or postcards. Tammy dropped her bag on the floor. "Is this really mine?" "For as long as you want it." She didn't respond, but she ran her hand along the edge of the desk, as if checking if it was real. "Unpack when you're ready," Edgar said. "Breakfast is in 20 minutes." Downstairs, he waited in the dining room. Mrs. Donnelly brought in toast, fruit, and oatmeal. "You're really doing this," she muttered. "I already did." "She'll need boundaries." "She'll have them. And patience. She's earned that." Tammy appeared 5 minutes later, clean shirt on, hair brushed back. She sat at the table without a word and began eating. Halfway through her toast, she looked up. "Is there a chore chart?" "No." "Why not?" "Because you're not here to earn your place." She was quiet for a moment. "Can I still help with dishes?" "You may." After breakfast, Edgar rolled toward his study. "Come with me. I want to show you something." She followed him through the hallway into a small library. He opened a drawer and pulled out a thin silver key. "This unlocks the piano cabinet," he said. "I want you to have it." Her eyes widened. "For real? You don't need permission anymore." She took the key carefully like it might break. Then she smiled. It was small. But it was there. The rest of the day passed in quiet rhythm. Edgar made calls. Tammy explored. She discovered the upstairs sunroom and the pantry that smelled like cinnamon. She tried 3 different pens on the desk before choosing her favorite. She taped a torn postcard to the bulletin board. That afternoon, a knock came at the front door. Mrs. Donnelly answered. Teresa Bloom from Child Services stood on the porch, clipboard in hand, accompanied by a young assistant holding a tablet. "We're here for the home check," Teresa said. Edgar greeted her with a nod. "Come in." They toured the house slowly. Teresa asked questions. Were there smoke detectors? Was medication locked away? Did Tammy have her own room? She peeked into the kitchen, tested the back door lock, and even examined the laundry area. When she reached the music room, she paused. "Does she spend time here?" "She plays. Not well. Yet. I'm surprised she's even comfortable in a space like this." "She makes herself comfortable." Teresa made another note. Tammy appeared in the doorway, holding a small book. "Is this where I'm supposed to talk?" "Only if you want to," Teresa said. Tammy looked at Edgar. Then back at Teresa. "I like it here," she said. Teresa waited. "Anything else?" Tammy hesitated. "I don't think about running anymore." The assistant tapped something into the tablet. Teresa nodded. "Thank you." When they were gone, Edgar returned to the study. Tammy followed. "You passed," she said. He raised an eyebrow. "I did." I saw her face. That clipboard was her lying face. "You've seen a lot of those, huh?" "Too many." He leaned back. "Want to celebrate?" "With what?" "There's a pie in the fridge. Mrs. Donnelly said it was too sweet." "I disagree." "Apple." "Of course." She grinned. "Now it feels like home." On Tuesday morning, Mrs. Donnelly brought a letter to Edgar's study. It was hand-delivered, she said. No return address. Just this. He took the envelope and opened it. Thick cream-colored paper. Letterhead from the Brookside Shelter Legal Office. Mr. Whitmore, we have been informed of actions that may constitute a breach of protocol regarding the care and supervision of Tamika Reed. While we appreciate your intentions, we must remind you that temporary placement does not supersede agency oversight. Continued deviation from recommended procedures could result in a revocation of your provisional guardianship status. Edgar read the letter twice, then set it down calmly. Donnelly, he said, call Vanessa. I'd like her here within the hour. 20 minutes later, Vanessa Price arrived in a navy suit, coffee in one hand and her own copy of the letter in the other. They're bluffing, she said. Legally, you've done nothing wrong. Every step we've taken is on record. Then why send it? Pressure. Politics. Someone in their office doesn't want this arrangement to work. Elaine Foster. Vanessa nodded. Most likely. I'll draft a response, but you might want to speak with Miss Ray directly. Edgar rolled toward the phone, then paused. No. I'll visit her. That afternoon, Edgar arrived at the shelter unannounced. The front desk clerk looked startled but buzzed him through. He found Miss Ray in her office, surrounded by stacked donation boxes. Her sleeves were rolled up, and her expression turned guarded when she saw him. I suppose you got the letter, she said. I did. I didn't send it. I know. Miss Ray sat down heavily. They've been on me for weeks. Elaine and a few others on the board think placing Tammy with you was a mistake. Unvetted arrangement, they called it. She's safer now than she's ever been. I agree. But they don't care about that. They care about appearances. Liability. Political fallout. So they're using her like a chess piece. They always have. Edgar looked around the cluttered room. You still believe in her? I always did. Then help me. Miss Ray looked up. How? Tell the board what you told me. Go on record. She hesitated. I could lose my job. And she could lose her chance. There was a long pause. Then she nodded. I'll draft something tonight. Back at the mansion, Tammy was in the hallway, watching the door. You left without saying anything, she said. I had to check on something. She stared at the envelope in his lap. That about me? Yes. Are they taking me back? No. She walked away, quick and stiff. Tammy. She didn't stop. He followed her down the hall, into the music room. She stood in front of the piano, arms crossed. They're gonna make you send me away. No, they won't. Yes, they will. People always give up. I'm not them. You're just slower. Edgar took a breath. Sit down. No. Then listen standing. She glared, but didn't leave. That letter is just noise, he said. People who think they know what's best because they've never been in the same room as you for more than 10 minutes. They have power. So do you. No, I don't. You walked into my house and asked for milk. That took more strength than most adults have. She looked down. I'm staying, he said. And you're staying. Even if I have to fight every last one of them. Tammy slowly sat on the bench. Will it get worse? She asked. Probably. Then what? Then we don't blink. That night, Edgar wrote a letter of his own. Not to Brookside. To the local paper. It was short. Blunt. A child asked me for milk. Then she asked for a place to sleep. She never asked for a lawyer or a form or a label. She asked for kindness. And I said yes. If that's a mistake, I'll keep making it. He handed the note to Vanessa the next morning. I want this published. She raised an eyebrow. Op-ed section? Front page. That'll stir things up. Good. Later that week, a knock came at the front gate. It wasn't a courier or a caseworker. It was a reporter. A young black woman with a microphone and a notepad. Mr. Whitmore? She asked. I'm Joy Daniels. I read your letter. I'm not giving a press statement. I'm not here for a statement. She held up a small photograph. It was a blurry image of Tammy, much younger, clutching a teddy bear in a shelter hallway. I was her volunteer reading partner once. Years ago. I thought she disappeared. She's here. Can I talk to her? No. Joy looked disappointed, but nodded. Tell her someone remembers. I will. After she left, Edgar went upstairs. Tammy was reading on the floor, legs crossed, back against the wall. Someone came asking for you, he said. She didn't look up. Who? A reporter. Said you used to read together. Tammy blinked. Miss Joy? She remembers you. Tammy stared at the page for a while. Then she whispered, I didn't think anybody did. Edgar sat beside her. No questions. No speeches. They just sat, two people who refused to blink. By Thursday morning, the letter had gone viral. Local papers picked it up first, then a national blog reposted it with the headline, Billionaire breaks the rules for a homeless child and refuses to apologize. By afternoon, cable news channels were debating whether Edgar Whitmore had become a reckless vigilante or a quiet hero. He didn't care much for either title. But the phone wouldn't stop ringing. Vanessa called twice. The state's Child Welfare Division is monitoring the situation closely, she said. That's bureaucratic speak for, expect visitors. Mrs. Donnelly overheard and folded her arms. Let them come, she said. They'll find the dishes washed, the fridge stocked, and a piano that's finally being used. Tammy hadn't touched the piano since the letter hit the news. She barely spoke during meals. She stayed in her room longer, reading books without turning on music, avoiding the foyer where reporters sometimes gathered outside the gate. That evening, Edgar knocked on her door. Still like peanut butter? He asked through the crack. There was no answer. He left a sandwich outside anyway. The next morning, 3 black SUVs pulled into the driveway. Men and women in state-issued badges stepped out, carrying folders, cameras, and checklists. The lead inspector was a stern-faced woman named Ms. Harwood. Mr. Whitmore, she said, we're here to conduct a full environmental and welfare assessment under Section 42A. You'll find everything in order, Edgar replied. They walked the property. Every room was photographed. They measured stair railings, checked expiration dates in the fridge, took notes on fire extinguishers, locks, bathroom accessibility, and bedding materials. Tammy sat silently at the kitchen table while one official asked her questions. Do you feel safe here? Yes. Does Mr. Whitmore ever yell at you? No. Do you have access to food, clean clothes, and a private space? Yes. Do you trust him? Tammy hesitated, then nodded. More than anyone. When they were done, Harwood gave a neutral nod. You'll hear from our office within 10 business days. As they drove off, Mrs. Donnelly exhaled hard. Vultures. Edgar didn't respond. He turned to Tammy. You did well. She shrugged. That night, Edgar rolled out onto the front lawn. He placed a single microphone on a stand, without podium or banner. Reporters gathered quickly. Some stood. Some crouched on the grass. Flashbulbs clicked. Edgar waited until the last van door slammed shut behind a late camera crew. Then he spoke. I'm not running for office. I don't need your votes. He paused. I'm not trying to be a hero. I didn't rescue anyone. A few reporters scribbled notes. I was sitting in a chair. A little girl knocked on my door. She asked for milk. He looked out at the crowd. I gave it to her. She didn't ask for money, or favors, or sympathy. She asked to be seen. So I looked. Silence. I'm not going to defend giving a child a home. That says more about this system than it says about me. Then he turned the mic off and wheeled himself back inside. No questions. No sound bites. Just that. By the weekend, responses started pouring in. One was a handwritten letter from a retired foster parent in Ohio. Another came in an email from a college student in Atlanta who had grown up in group homes. I was Tammy once, it read. No one looked. I'm glad someone finally did. Online, the hashtag she asked for milk began trending. People posted photos of the letter. Videos of their own stories of being ignored, overlooked, passed around. Tammy saw it all. She stood behind Edgar's desk one evening, scrolling through his iPad. You didn't make them say this? She asked. No. They just did. Yes. She read silently for a while. Then set the iPad down. Her voice was quiet. Are you scared they'll still take me? Edgar looked up. Are you scared? She nodded. Then let's be scared together, he said. She didn't smile. But she didn't walk away either. On Monday, a small envelope arrived. It was not from the state. It was from a woman named Marla Quinn, a former shelter worker, now a volunteer advocate. Inside was a photo, a young Tammy, maybe 4 years old, sitting on the floor in a red coat, her fingers stained with paint, drawing on newspaper. On the back, in neat handwriting, it read, "She used to hum when she drew, even when no one watched." Tammy held the photo in both hands. Her eyes traced the lines slowly. "I don't remember that coat," she whispered. "It was a good color," Edgar said. "Do you think I was happy?" "I think you were trying to be." She looked at him. "I want to play again." "The piano?" She nodded. "I never asked you to stop." "I didn't stop because of you." She walked to the music room, sat at the bench, opened the lid. She didn't hum this time, but she played. The call came on a Tuesday morning. Vanessa picked up on the first ring, listened silently for 30 seconds, then handed the phone to Edgar. "They want to speak with you directly," she said. Edgar pressed the receiver to his ear. "This is Whitmore." A woman's voice spoke clearly. "Mr. Whitmore, this is Deputy Director Hughes from the State Child Welfare Office. We've completed our assessment." He said nothing, just waited. "You've been granted temporary guardianship of Tamika Reed for a period of 1 year, subject to quarterly review. If no violations are found, permanent guardianship will be considered." Still, he said nothing. "We understand this has been a unique case," she continued. "Thank you for your patience." He ended the call. Vanessa raised her brows. "Well, she's staying." Mrs. Donnelly, standing in the doorway, let out a long breath. About time. That afternoon, a black sedan pulled into the driveway. Edgar watched from the library window as a woman in a tailored gray coat stepped out, flanked by 2 staffers. Elaine Foster. Vanessa met her at the door, but Elaine waved her off. "I need 5 minutes alone," she said. She walked into the study without knocking. "Congratulations," she said. "You got what you wanted." "I got what she deserved." Elaine looked unimpressed. "You're not the only one who cares about children, Whitmore. But some of us do it without newspaper headlines. You sent a legal threat to a child's home. I followed protocol. You followed fear." Elaine sat down. "There's a way to end this cleanly. Withdraw your complaints. Drop the letter campaign. We'll make it official, even fast-track it." Edgar stared. "We'll even assign resources. A private caseworker. Health benefits. Financial support for home education. All yours. In exchange for silence." Elaine didn't answer. "I'll pass. You're making enemies. I've had worse." She stood up slowly. "You think this is a victory? I think she's playing piano again." Elaine left without another word. That evening, Tammy was in the garden. She'd pulled a chair beside the fountain and was drawing in a spiral notebook. Edgar wheeled up beside her. "Sketching?" "Trying to." He watched her pencil lines. They were rough but focused, the shape of the house, a tree, her own legs folded beneath the chair. "Can I tell you something?" he asked. She nodded. "Years ago, I left my office window open. A bird flew in. Little thing. Black and blue, with a bent wing. What did you do?" "I didn't know what to do. I called people, looked up guides, tried building a tiny box with towels." "Did it work?" "No. It just sat on the windowsill and stared at me." "For how long?" 3 days. Then it flew away." Tammy blinked. "But its wing was broken. Guess it healed." She kept drawing, then paused. "What made you think of that story?" He looked up at the fading sky. "Because I keep thinking maybe I was supposed to learn something back then. About not fixing things. Just being there." Tammy was quiet. Then she asked, "Do you think that bird would come back?" He turned to her. "Would you?" She didn't answer right away. Then, "If it had a piano." He laughed. For the first time, she did too. The next day, a package arrived. No return address. Inside was a new set of watercolor paints, a blank sketchbook, and a card that simply read, "Keep drawing. Keep asking. Joy." Tammy showed it to Edgar over breakfast. She remembered. She did. They sat on the porch that evening. No reporters now. No letters. No visitors. Just them. Edgar pointed to the horizon. "Suppose tomorrow you could ask for anything. Anything in the world." Tammy tilted her head. "Anything. Anything." She thought for a while. Then said, "That tomorrow looks like today." He nodded slowly. "I think we can arrange that."